Admiral Jack Reynolds stood in the war room deep beneath the Pentagon, surrounded by holographic displays showing human colonies across 3 star systems. Red markers indicated confirmed Devourer activity, while blue dots marked human military assets. The numbers did not look encouraging. "Status report," Jack said to his assembled staff. General Lisa Martinez stepped forward, her uniform crisp despite having worked for 18 straight hours. "All colonial militias have been activated. We have 47 million civilians in the threatened sectors, but evacuation is proceeding slowly. Most colonists are refusing to leave their homes." "Good," Jack replied, surprising several junior officers. "We need people to stay and fight. Empty colonies are just targets." Admiral Kate Sullivan activated a new display showing the human fleet positions. "We have assembled every available warship at Rally Point Alpha. 312 vessels, total, from heavy battleships down to patrol corvettes. It is not enough to match the Devourer numbers, but our ships are fast and well-armed." Jack nodded. Speed and firepower were humanity's advantages. The alien species favored massive, heavily shielded vessels designed for exploration and defense. Human warships were built for aggression and rapid deployment. "What about the new weapons?" Jack asked. Dr. Eric Thompson, the head of the emergency research team, looked up from his datapad. "We have made significant progress, Admiral. Dr. Amy Foster's team has confirmed that the Devourers use quantum entanglement for fleet coordination. If we can disrupt those signals, their units will lose cohesion." Dr. Amy Foster stepped forward, her lab coat stained with coffee and electronic components. "We have developed electromagnetic pulse weapons specifically designed to interfere with quantum networks. Initial tests show promise, but we need live targets to confirm effectiveness." "You will get them soon enough," Jack said grimly. "How long until the new weapons can be deployed?" 72 hours for the first batch," Amy replied. "We are retrofitting every ship in the fleet with at least basic EMP capability." A communication alert chimed through the room. Jack activated the main screen to see Ambassador Helen Carter calling from the council station. "Admiral, I wanted to update you on the galactic reaction to our decision," Helen said. "The alien species are convinced we have lost our minds. They keep offering to evacuate our civilians and asking us to reconsider." "Any offers of military support?" Lisa asked. Helen shook her head. "None of them will commit warships to what they see as a suicide mission. However, the Kepler Collective has provided detailed historical data about previous Devourer encounters. The information is limited but helpful." "What did they learn from past encounters?" Eric asked. "The Devourers always follow the same pattern," Helen explained. "They arrive, strip a system clean of all matter, then move to the next target. They work methodically, never leaving anything behind. The ancient records suggest they have some kind of central coordination, but no one ever got close enough to study it." Jack studied the data flowing across his screens. "What about their weaknesses?" "That is where it gets interesting," Helen continued. "The few species that survived direct contact reported that individual Devourer units seemed to operate on pre-programmed instructions. They did not adapt well to unexpected situations, meaning they have never faced an enemy that fought back effectively," Kate observed. "Exactly. Every species in galactic history has chosen the same strategy: hide, evacuate, and wait for the Devourers to move on. No one has ever tried to actually destroy them." Jack felt a grim smile cross his face. "Then they are about to learn what human warfare looks like." Meanwhile, at the Titan naval shipyard orbiting Saturn, Captain Sam Mitchell supervised the final preparations of his battleship, the UES Defiance. Chief Engineer Danny Walsh had been working around the clock to install the new EMP weapons alongside the ship's existing armament. "How do the new systems look?" Sam asked as he toured the weapon bays. "Complicated but functional," Danny replied, wiping grease from his hands. "The EMP generators draw massive power, so we can only fire them in short bursts. But if Dr. Foster is right about the quantum disruption, even a few seconds should be enough." In the Marine quarters, Captain Lisa Park drilled her Special Forces units on zero-gravity combat techniques. Her Lieutenant, Greg Adams, had spent weeks developing new tactics for fighting mechanical enemies in space. "Remember, these are not alien soldiers," Lisa called out to her troops. They are machines. They will not feel fear. They will not retreat from pain, and they will not make emotional mistakes. But they also cannot adapt the way living beings can. One of her Marines, Sergeant Bill Cooper, raised his hand. Captain, what if our weapons cannot penetrate their armor? Then we get creative, Lisa replied. Machines have joints, sensors, and power systems. Find the weak spots and exploit them. Humans have been fighting machines since we invented them. Across the solar system, similar preparations were taking place on every human world. On Mars, weapons factories worked overtime to produce ammunition and equipment. On Europa, the ice mines were converted to manufacture armor plating. On Earth itself, recruitment centers saw long lines of volunteers signing up for emergency military service. Dr. Amy Foster worked in her laboratory aboard the research station orbiting Jupiter, testing her electromagnetic pulse designs against captured alien technology. The results were promising. The quantum disruption effect worked exactly as predicted, causing coordinated systems to fall into chaos. If we can get close enough to their command ships, she explained to her research team, we might be able to upload a virus directly into their quantum network. Instead of just disrupting one ship, we could potentially crash their entire fleet coordination. Her assistant, Dr. Kevin Brown, looked skeptical. That would require boarding one of their vessels while it is still active. The radiation levels alone would be lethal. Then we develop better radiation shielding, Amy replied. Or we find volunteers willing to make the sacrifice. Back at the Pentagon, Admiral Jack Reynolds received a priority communication from the outer colonies. Captain Rachel Webb, commanding the defense station at New Denver, reported unusual sensor readings. Admiral, we are detecting massive energy signatures moving through the outer system. Based on the electromagnetic patterns, I believe we are looking at the advanced scouts of a devourer fleet. Jack felt his stomach tighten. How long until they reach the colony? 48 hours at current speed. Sir, request permission to begin. Civilian evacuation. Denied, Jack replied firmly. All civilians are to remain in hardened shelters. Military personnel are to prepare for combat operations. This is what we have been training for. Throughout the human-controlled sectors of space, the same message went out to every ship, every station, and every colony. No retreat, no evacuation, no surrender. Humanity would make its stand. The alien species monitoring human communications could not understand what they were seeing. According to every model of rational behavior, the humans should be fleeing in terror. Instead, they were moving military assets toward the threat and calling for more volunteers. Chancellor Vexitar received hourly updates from his intelligence staff, each report more confusing than the last. The humans were not just refusing to evacuate, they were actively seeking contact with the devourers. Perhaps, suggested his aide, the humans do not fully understand what they face. Vexitar studied the latest intelligence reports. Human military production had increased by 300% in the past week. Their entire economy had shifted to war footing, with an efficiency that impressed even the militaristic species. No, he said quietly. I think they understand exactly what they face. What we do not understand is why they believe they can win. The massive chamber of the Galactic Council hummed with nervous energy as beings from across the galaxy gathered for an emergency session. Helen Carter sat in the human delegation section, her blue uniform standing out among the colorful robes and environmental suits of dozens of alien species. She had been Earth's ambassador to the Council for 3 years, but she had never seen the other delegates look so afraid. Chancellor Vexitar of the Zilithian Empire stood at the center podium, his crystal-like body catching the artificial light. His voice carried through the chamber's translation systems as he spoke to the assembled representatives. Fellow members of the Council, we face a threat unlike any we have encountered in recent memory. The ancient enemy has returned. The devourers have awakened from their long sleep and begun their march across the outer rim territories. A wave of chittering, electronic beeps and gasps filled the chamber. Helen leaned forward in her seat. She had heard whispers about the devourers in Council records, but most species treated them like an old legend. 3 star systems have gone completely dark in the past month, Vexitar continued. The Altarian colonies of Kepler 442, the mining worlds of Sector 7, and the research stations in the Void Reach. All communication has ceased. Our long-range sensors show nothing but empty space where thriving worlds once existed. Ambassador. Kethra of the Altarian Republic stood up, her feathered crest trembling. Chancellor, surely you cannot mean the devourers of ancient history. Those were myths, stories told to frighten young ones. I wish that were true, Vextar replied. Our deep space monitoring stations have confirmed it. The machine fleets match exactly the descriptions from our oldest records. Geometric constructs the size of small moons moving in perfect formation, stripping everything in their path down to the atomic level. The chamber erupted in panicked discussions. Helen listened as various species began talking over each other, their voices mixing into a chaos of fear and disbelief. The last time they came, we barely survived, said Elder Morvac of the Kepler Collective, his ancient voice barely a whisper through the speakers. My people lost 90% of our worlds. We only endured by hiding in the deep void until they moved on to other galaxies. Then we know what must be done, declared Trade Minister Zolan of the Commercial Federation. We begin immediate evacuation procedures. All outer rim colonies must be abandoned. All military assets must be pulled back to defend the core worlds. Agreed, said Admiral Thex of the Stellar Defense Force. We cannot fight them. No one has ever successfully fought the Devourers. Our only hope is to minimize casualties and wait for them to leave. Helen watched as one by one, every species in the chamber agreed to the same plan. Evacuation, retreat, hiding. Some talked about creating refugee centers in the galactic core. Others discussed which planets could be abandoned first to buy time. For more important worlds, the evacuation will require enormous resources, Vextar said. We will need every available transport ship, every supply depot, every safe harbor. I call upon all member species to contribute according to their abilities. The discussions continued for hours. The Altarians offered their fast courier ships for evacuating civilians. The Kepler Collective provided detailed maps of safe hiding, spots in nebulae and asteroid fields. The Trading Federation pledged their massive cargo vessels for moving supplies and equipment. As the session went on, Helen realized that no one had asked humanity for their contribution yet. Earth was still considered a minor member of the Council, having joined only 50 years ago. Most species viewed humans as primitive and aggressive, useful mainly for manual labor and security work. Finally, as the initial panic began to settle into organized planning, Chancellor Vextar turned toward the human section. Ambassador Carter, Earth has several colonies in the affected regions. What resources can humanity provide for the evacuation effort? Your people have experience with rapid planetary abandonment from your early colonization failures. Helen stood, slowly, feeling the weight of thousands of alien eyes upon her. The chamber fell silent as she activated her voice transmitter. Chancellor Vextar, honored delegates, I thank the Council for the detailed briefing on this threat. She began, her voice calm and steady. I have transmitted all relevant information to Earth Command and received their official response. She paused, looking around the chamber at the expectant faces of the galaxy's most powerful beings. The human government appreciates the Council's evacuation plans and resource-sharing proposals. However, I must inform you that humanity will not be participating in the evacuation. Our colonies will not be abandoned. Our military forces will not retreat to the core worlds. Confused murmurs began to rise from the assembly. Helen continued before anyone could interrupt. After careful consideration of all available options, Earth has made its decision. Humanity is going to battle. The chamber exploded in shocked reactions. Electronic screeches from the Mechanoid Collective mixed with the alarmed hooting of the Altarians. Several delegates stood up, gesturing wildly as they tried to speak over each other. Impossible, shouted Admiral Thex. No species has ever fought the Devourers successfully. They are unstoppable. They have consumed entire galactic arms. Young human, Elder Morvac said, his voice heavy with concern. You do not understand what you face. These machines have existed since before your son was born. They have destroyed civilizations that make your Earth look like a primitive backwater. Chancellor Vextar raised his crystalline hand for silence. Ambassador Carter, surely Earth Command has not fully considered the implications of this decision. Perhaps a recess to allow for further consultation would be wise. Helen shook her head. There is no need for further consultation, Chancellor. Our decision is final. Human forces are already mobilizing. We will defend our colonies and we will destroy any devourer forces that threaten them. But this is suicide, pleaded Ambassador Kethra. Your species will be wiped out. We cannot allow this to happen. Your concern is noted and appreciated, Helen replied. However, humanity has never asked permission to defend itself, and we are not starting now. She gathered her datapad and stood to leave. Earth will keep the Council informed of our military operations. We suggest that evacuation efforts focus on the species that actually plan to evacuate. As Helen walked toward the chamber exit, the assembled delegates sat in stunned silence. Never in the recorded history of the Galactic Council had any species chosen to fight rather than flee when faced with extinction. The very concept seemed alien to beings who had survived for millennia through diplomacy, trade, and strategic retreat. Behind her, Chancellor Vextar called the session to recess as the delegates began frantically contacting their home governments. Within hours, news of humanity's impossible decision would spread across the galaxy, leaving every civilized species with the same question. Had the humans finally lost their minds completely, or did they know something that the rest of the galaxy had forgotten? The Devourer fleet emerged from hyperspace like a plague of metal locusts, their massive geometric forms blotting out the stars around New Denver Colony. Captain Sam Mitchell watched from the bridge of the UES Defiance as his sensors tried to process what they were seeing. Mother of God, whispered his tactical officer, Commander Rita Jones. The largest construct is over 300 kilometers across. Communications Officer Tony Clark looked up from his station. Captain, I am reading 17 major vessels and dozens of smaller support craft. Energy signatures are off the charts. Sam studied the holographic display showing the enemy formation. The Devourers moved in perfect geometric patterns, their crystalline hulls reflecting the light of the New Denver sun. Each ship bristled with harvesting equipment and weapon systems that defied human understanding. All ships, this is Defiance Actual, Sam broadcast to the human fleet. Execute attack. Pattern Delta. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and do not give them time to lock onto our positions. The human task force consisted of 37 warships, tiny compared to the Devourer fleet but built for speed and maneuverability. They accelerated toward the enemy at maximum burn, their crews strapped in against the crushing G-forces, EMP. Weapons charged and ready, reported Weapons Officer Carl Nash. Target the smallest construct first, Sam ordered. Let's see what Dr. Foster's toys can do. The first human salvo lit up space with electromagnetic pulses and nuclear warheads. The EMP weapon struck the target Devourer ship, and immediately its perfect formation began to wobble. Secondary explosions rippled across its hull as internal systems overloaded. Direct hit, Rita called out. The target is losing coordination with the rest of the fleet. But the Devourer's response was swift and devastating. Focused energy beams lanced out from the larger constructs, slicing through human shields like paper. The destroyer UES Ranger took a direct hit and vaporized instantly. 200 lives lost in a flash of light. Evasive maneuvers, Sam shouted. Do not let them get a targeting lock. The human ships scattered, using their superior speed to stay ahead of the Devourer weapons. They fought like a pack of wolves against bears, darting in to strike before retreating beyond retaliation range. On the surface of New Denver, Captain Lisa Park coordinated the evacuation of civilian shelters as Devourer harvesting drones began landing. The mechanical units moved with inhuman precision, their cutting beams slicing through buildings to extract raw materials. All Marine units concentrate fire on the harvesters, Lisa commanded through her comm unit. Do not let them establish a foothold. Lieutenant Greg Adams led his squad through the ruins of downtown New Denver, carrying shoulder-fired missiles designed to punch through armored targets. The Devourer drones were fast but predictable, following programming that made them efficient, but not adaptive. Target the joints where the legs connect to the main body, Greg called to his men. Mobility kills are our best option. His squad opened fire with coordinated precision. The anti-armor missiles struck home, sending one of the massive harvesting machines crashing into a shopping complex. But more drones were landing every minute. In space, the battle continued to rage as human ships danced around the massive devourer constructs. Captain Michelle Brooks of the cruiser UES Intrepid discovered that the enemy ships had blind spots where their weapons could not target small, fast-moving objects. "All ships, this is Intrepid," she broadcast. "The big ones cannot hit us if we stay close to their hulls. Use their size against them." The human fleet began executing dangerous close-approach attacks, skimming along the surfaces of the enemy ships while unleashing everything they had. The EMP weapons proved increasingly effective at disrupting devourer coordination, but the enemy's raw firepower was overwhelming. Dr. Amy Foster monitored the battle from her research station, watching as her electromagnetic pulse weapons performed, exactly as predicted. "The quantum disruption is working," she reported to Admiral Reynolds. "But we need to target their command ship to achieve fleet-wide effects." "Which one is the command ship?" Jack asked. Amy studied the sensor data. "The largest construct at the center of their formation. It is coordinating the movements of all other units through quantum entanglement signals." Captain Sam Mitchell received the targeting data and felt his blood run cold. The command ship was a massive pyramid-shaped construct that dwarfed even the largest human battleship. Its hull bristled with weapons and its energy signature suggested it was heavily shielded. "Defiance to all ships," Sam broadcast. "We are going to attempt a close approach on the enemy command vessel. Volunteers only for this run." To his surprise, every ship in the fleet acknowledged and moved to support the attack. The human vessels formed up in a tight formation and accelerated toward the pyramid at maximum speed. The devourer response was immediate and brutal. Energy beams crisscrossed space as the human ships weaved through the defensive fire. The frigate UES Valiant took a glancing hit and lost its port engines, but continued flying on maneuvering thrusters alone. "EMP weapons locked on target," Rita reported. "Firing in 3, 2, 1. The electromagnetic pulse struck the command ship's hull and penetrated deep into its interior systems. For a moment, the entire Devourer fleet hesitated as their coordination network flickered. "It worked," Tony shouted. "The whole fleet is showing signs of disruption." But the effect was temporary. Within seconds, backup systems restored the quantum network, and the Devourers resumed their coordinated attack with renewed fury. On New Denver's surface, the battle had turned into a running fight through the colony's industrial district. Lisa, Park's Marines used hit-and-run tactics against the harvesting drones, striking from cover before falling back to new positions. Sergeant Mike Torres discovered that the drones had difficulty tracking targets that moved erratically. "They expect us to run in straight lines," he reported. "Change direction randomly and they lose targeting locks." Greg Adams coordinated the evacuation of the last civilian shelters while his men held off wave after wave of mechanical attackers. The colonists were brave, but they were farmers and miners, not soldiers. They needed time to reach the underground bunkers. "How much longer?" Lisa asked through the comm. 10 minutes for the last transport," Greg replied, ducking as a devourer beam sliced through the wall above his head. "We can hold them that long." In space, Captain Sam Mitchell made a desperate decision. The human fleet was taking heavy casualties and could not maintain the fight much longer, but they had learned valuable lessons about devourer capabilities and weaknesses. "All ships, execute withdrawal pattern Charlie," he ordered. "Fall back to rally point Beta." The human fleet disengaged from the battle, using every trick they had learned to avoid the pursuing devourer forces. They had lost 8 ships and over 1,000 personnel, but they had achieved something no species in galactic history had managed. They had hurt the devourers. As the last human ships disappeared into hyperspace, the devourer fleet resumed its methodical consumption of New Denver. But their efficiency had been reduced by nearly 30% due to the damage inflicted by human weapons. Admiral Jack Reynolds studied the battle reports with grim satisfaction. "Analysis?" he asked his staff. "The EMP weapons work," Dr. Amy Foster reported, but we need sustained targeting of their command ships to achieve lasting disruption. Their formation tactics are predictable, added Admiral Kate Sullivan. They expect enemies to flee, not engage in sustained combat. General Lisa Martinez nodded agreement. Ground forces report that the harvesting drones follow rigid programming. Our troops can exploit that predictability. Jack looked around the war room at his exhausted but determined staff. Then we know what we need to do. We need to get close enough to their command ships to upload Dr. Foster's virus directly. That will require a suicide mission, Kate pointed out. No ship can survive that close to a Devourer command vessel. Then we find volunteers willing to make that sacrifice, Jack replied. This is just the beginning. 3 weeks after the battle at New Denver, humanity launched its counterattack across 7 star systems simultaneously. Admiral Kate Sullivan commanded the Space Forces from the battleship UES Victory, while General Lisa Martinez coordinated ground operations from her command ship. They had learned from their first encounter with the Devourers, and now they would show the galaxy what human warfare really looked like. Captain Danny Rodriguez piloted his stealth reconnaissance ship through the asteroid field surrounding the Kepler 442 system, where a massive Devourer fleet was systematically stripping the former Altarian colonies. His navigator, Lieutenant Sarah Webb, guided them between the floating rocks with precision that would have impressed even veteran pilots. Target acquired, Sarah whispered, though there was no one in space to hear them. The command ship sat at the center of the Devourer formation like a metal mountain, its quantum communication arrays glowing with energy. Danny activated his recording systems and began mapping the enemy fleet's movement patterns. After hours of careful observation, he transmitted the intelligence back to Admiral Sullivan. The command ship changes position every 6 hours, he reported, but it always maintains the same relative distance from the harvesting vessels. If we time our attack correctly, we can isolate it from the defensive screen. Meanwhile, Dr. Eric Thompson and Dr. Amy Foster worked frantically in their laboratory aboard the research vessel UES Newton. They had developed a computer virus specifically designed to corrupt the Devourer quantum communication network, but they needed to get within 10 kilometers of a command ship to upload it successfully. The virus is ready, Amy announced to the assembled team, but the delivery system will require a volunteer crew to make a suicide run. We have volunteers, replied Major Steve Collins, who had been standing quietly in the corner of the lab. My special operations team has been training for this mission since New Denver. Steve's team consisted of 12 specialists in zero-gravity combat and electronic warfare. Sergeant Maria Lopez was his demolitions expert, while Corporal Jake Turner handled computer systems. All of them knew they were volunteering for a one-way mission. The plan is simple, Steve explained to his team. We use a modified boarding torpedo to penetrate the command ship's hull. Once inside, we fight our way to the quantum core and upload the virus. The ship's destruction will propagate the virus throughout their entire network. What about extraction? Asked Jake. There is no extraction, Steve replied honestly. We complete the mission or we die trying. Admiral Kate Sullivan coordinated the attack from the bridge of the UES Victory, surrounded by holographic displays showing human forces throughout the target systems. The plan required perfect timing and absolute commitment from every participant. All units report ready, announced her communications officer, Lieutenant Mike Chen. Execute Operation Sledgehammer, Kate ordered. Across 7 star systems, human fleets struck simultaneously at Devourer formations. Unlike their previous encounter, this time they did not retreat when the enemy responded. They fought with the desperate fury of a species facing extinction. Captain Sam Mitchell led the assault on the Proxima system, his fleet of 40 ships diving straight into the heart of the Devourer formation. The enemy responded with devastating firepower, but the humans had learned to use their speed and unpredictability to minimize casualties. All ships, concentrate fire on the escort vessels, Sam commanded. Clear a path for the boarding team. The human warships unleashed everything they had at the smaller Devourer constructs protecting the command ship. EMP weapons disrupted their coordination while nuclear warheads punched through their armor. The mechanical precision of the enemy fleet began to break down under the chaotic human assault. In the Vega system, Commander Lisa Brooks discovered that Devourer ships had trouble adapting to three-dimensional tactics. "They fight like they are still on a flat surface," she reported. "Attack from above and below simultaneously." Her squadron executed complex spiraling maneuvers that confused the enemy targeting systems. The Devourers were programmed to engage threats that approached in predictable patterns, not opponents who attacked from multiple angles at once. On the ground at the Tau Ceti mining colonies, Captain Lisa Park led her Marines in urban warfare against Devourer harvesting drones. Her forces had learned to use the environment against their mechanical enemies. "Set charges on the support beams," she ordered Lieutenant Greg Adams. "Bring the whole building down on them." The controlled demolition crushed a dozen harvesting drones under tons of concrete and steel. The machines were powerful, but they could not function when physically disabled. Meanwhile, Major Steve Collins and his team approached their target in a modified torpedo designed to penetrate starship hulls. Engineer Paula Davis and technician Rob Parker monitored their approach from the UES Victory, tracking the boarding team's progress through the chaos of battle. "Target acquired," Steve reported as the massive pyramid-shaped command ship filled their viewports. Beginning final approach, the torpedo accelerated toward the enemy vessel at maximum velocity, its reinforced nose cone designed to punch through even the heaviest armor. Defensive systems tried to target the small craft, but it was too fast and too close to the larger battle for the automated weapons to track effectively. Impact came with bone-crushing force. The torpedo's shaped charges detonated against the command ship's hull, blasting a hole large enough for the strike team to enter. Steve led his men through the breach into the alien interior of the Devourer vessel. The inside of the ship was a maze of crystalline corridors and pulsing energy conduits. Mechanical defenders swarmed toward the human intruders, their cutting beams slicing through bulkheads like paper. "Move fast and stay together," Steve commanded as his team fought through the ship's automated defenses. Maria Lopez used shaped charges to clear blocked passages while Jake Turner hacked into the ship's internal systems to locate the quantum core. The fighting was brutal and desperate. Corporal Nina Hayes fell to a Devourer beam weapon while protecting the team's flanks. Sergeant Bill Wilson sacrificed himself to hold a corridor against overwhelming mechanical forces, but the human team pushed forward with grim determination. They had trained for this mission knowing that success would come at the cost of their lives. "Quantum core located," Jake announced. 2 levels down and 300 meters forward. The team fought their way through increasingly heavy resistance as the ship's defensive systems focused on protecting their vital systems. Steve realized that the Devourers had never faced boarding actions before. Their internal defenses were designed to repel accidents and system failures, not armed invasion. When they finally reached the quantum core chamber, Steve was amazed by what he found. The core was a massive, crystalline structure that pulsed with energy, surrounded by quantum field generators that connected it to every ship in the fleet. "Upload the virus," he ordered Jake. His computer specialist connected Dr. Foster's device to the quantum network interface and began the upload process. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the ship as the Devourer systems detected the intrusion. 30 seconds to completion, Jake reported. The mechanical defenders converged, on their position with renewed fury. Maria Lopez used her remaining explosives to seal the entrances while the surviving team members fought desperately to buy Jake the time he needed. "Upload complete," Jake announced, just as a Devourer beam cut him down. Steve watched as the virus propagated through the quantum network, spreading from ship to ship throughout the entire fleet. The perfect coordination that had made the Devourers so terrifying began to collapse as their communication systems crashed. In space around the command ship, Admiral Kate Sullivan watched in amazement as the enemy fleet began to fall apart. Ships collided with each other as their navigation systems failed. Harvesting operations ceased as the drones lost contact with their controllers. "The virus is working," Dr. Amy Foster reported from her monitoring station. "Quantum network integrity is down to 12% and falling, but Major Steve Collins would not live to see the full results of his mission." The command ship's self-destruct systems activated as a final defensive measure, vaporizing the vessel and everyone aboard in a flash of nuclear fire. The destruction of the command ship sent shockwaves through the Devourer fleet. Without central coordination, individual ships began operating on basic programming that made them predictable and vulnerable to human tactics. "All units press the attack," Kate ordered. "Do not give them time to adapt." The human fleets throughout 7 star systems exploited the chaos mercilessly. Ships that had seemed invincible hours before now fell to concentrated human firepower. The mechanical precision that had been the Devourer's greatest strength became their weakness when disrupted. Within 6 hours, humanity had achieved something that no species in galactic history had ever accomplished. They had not just fought the Devourers to a standstill, they had won decisive victories in multiple systems. The news spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had considered humanity primitive and violent began to understand that these same qualities made humans uniquely suited for this kind of warfare. The final battle took place in the Void Nexus, a region of empty space between galactic arms where the Devourers had established their primary staging area. Admiral Jack Reynolds stood on the bridge of the flagship UES Victory, watching as the largest enemy construct humanity had ever encountered filled the main view screen. The Devourer factory ship was the size of a small moon, its geometric hull bristling with manufacturing equipment and defensive systems. Smaller constructs moved around it like metal parasites, carrying raw materials harvested from dozens of consumed worlds. "Sensor analysis complete," reported Commander Rita Jones, now serving as Jack's tactical officer after her promotion following Captain Mitchell's heroic death at the Battle of Vega Prime. "The factory ship is producing new Devourer units every 18 minutes. If we do not stop it, they will rebuild their entire fleet within months." Communications Officer Lieutenant Mike Chen looked up from his station. "Admiral, we are receiving volunteers from across the galaxy. Young beings from 17 different species have requested permission to join our assault." Jack nodded grimly. Word of humanity's victories had spread throughout the galaxy, inspiring a new generation of aliens who were tired of hiding from ancient threats. Despite their government's official neutrality, these volunteers had found ways to reach human space. "Tell them they are welcome to observe," Jack replied. "But this is a human operation. We do not ask others to die for our wars." The human fleet had grown to over 400 ships, every vessel equipped with the latest electromagnetic pulse weapons and quantum virus delivery systems. Dr. Amy Foster's research team had worked tirelessly to improve their technology after studying the wreckage from previous battles. "EMP weapons are charged and ready," reported Weapons Officer Lieutenant Paul Davis. "Dr. Foster's virus has been uploaded to all boarding teams." Engineer Paula Davis and technician Rob Parker monitored the fleet's status from their stations, coordinating repairs and ammunition transfers between ships. The human supply chain had evolved to support sustained combat operations far from home base. Captain Danny Rodriguez led the reconnaissance squadron in their final approach to the factory ship. His pilot, Lieutenant Sarah Webb, guided their stealth vessel through the defensive perimeter with skills honed through months of dangerous missions. "Target analysis complete," Danny reported. "The factory ship has 17 major defensive nodes and a central core that appears to coordinate all manufacturing operations. Recommend simultaneous strikes on all targets." The plan was ambitious, even by human standards. They would assault the most heavily defended Devourer position ever encountered, requiring every ship in the fleet to perform perfectly under the most dangerous conditions imaginable. "All ships, this is Admiral Reynolds," Jack broadcast to the assembled fleet. "Today we end this war. We show the galaxy that some threats can be defeated if beings are willing to stand and fight." The human fleet accelerated toward the factory, ship at maximum velocity, their formation spreading out to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. The Devourer response was immediate and overwhelming as defensive systems came online. Energy beams crisscrossed space like deadly lightning, forcing the human ships to weave through the fire with desperate precision. The destroyer UES Ranger took a direct hit and broke apart, but her sister ships pressed forward without hesitation. Captain Lisa Brooks led the first wave against the factory ship's defensive nodes, her squadron diving through concentrated fire to reach their targets. "All ships, target the sensor arrays first," she commanded. "Blind them before they can coordinate their defenses." Her ships unleashed coordinated EMP strikes that disrupted the factory ship's targeting systems. The massive defensive beams began, firing wildly, missing their intended targets as their guidance systems failed. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Maria Lopez led a boarding team toward the factory ship's main manufacturing center. She had been promoted after surviving the quantum core mission that cost Major Steve Collins his life, and now she commanded her own strike force. "Remember, we need to reach the central core and upload the virus," she told her team through the comm system. "Once that virus spreads through their manufacturing network, every Devourer unit they produce will be corrupted." Her boarding torpedo punched through the factory ship's hull in a shower of sparks and molten metal. The strike team fought their way through corridors filled with automated defenders, using lessons learned from previous missions. Sergeant Bill Turner, promoted to replace the fallen Jake Turner, hacked into the ship's internal systems to map their route to the core. "Manufacturing center is 12 levels down," he reported. "Heavy resistance between here and there." The team fought through wave after wave of mechanical defenders, their human adaptability allowing them to overcome programmed responses. The Devourers had never faced sustained boarding actions, and their internal defenses were not designed for determined human assault teams. In space, the battle reached its climax as human ships pressed their attack against overwhelming odds. Captain Sam Mitchell's replacement, Commander Rachel Stone, led a desperate assault on the factory ship's primary power core. "All ships concentrate fire on grid section 7, she commanded. "If we can overload their power systems, the whole ship will shut down." The coordinated human strike overwhelmed the Devourer defenses through sheer determination and tactical innovation. Nuclear warheads detonated against the factory ship's hull while EMP weapons disrupted its internal systems. Deep inside the vessel, Maria Lopez and her team finally reached the central manufacturing core. The chamber was enormous, filled with quantum machinery that produced new Devourer units from raw materials harvested across the galaxy. "Upload the virus," Maria ordered as her team established a defensive perimeter around the quantum interface. Bill Turner connected Dr. Foster's device to the manufacturing network and began the upload process. Immediately, the factory ship's systems detected the intrusion and began mobilizing every available defender. 2 minutes to completion," Bill announced as mechanical units swarmed toward their position. The human team fought with desperate courage, knowing that the success of their mission would determine the outcome of the entire war. Corporal Nina Davis fell defending the left flank while Sergeant Mike Wilson held the right side against overwhelming numbers. "Upload complete," Bill reported, just as a Devourer beam weapon cut through his armor. Maria watched as the virus propagated through the manufacturing network, corrupting every system it touched. The new Devourer units being produced began malfunctioning immediately, their quantum coordination systems infected with human code. But more importantly, the virus spread beyond the factory ship itself. The corrupted units carried the infection to other Devourer fleets, spreading the digital plague throughout their entire network. Admiral Jack Reynolds watched from the Victory's bridge as chaos spread through the enemy forces. Ships that had operated in perfect coordination for millennia began colliding with each other as their navigation systems failed. "Admiral, we are detecting massive system failures throughout the Devourer fleet," reported Rita Jones. "They are losing coordination on a galactic scale." Dr. Amy Foster monitored the virus propagation from her station, amazement evident in her voice. "The infection is spreading faster than predicted. Every Devourer unit in contact with the network is being affected." Then something unprecedented happened. The massive factory ship began to move, not toward the human fleet but away from the galaxy entirely. Its surviving systems had apparently initiated some kind of emergency protocol. "Sir, the entire Devourer fleet is withdrawing," Mike Chen reported. "They are heading for the galactic edge at maximum velocity." Jack felt a moment of disbelief. For the first time in recorded galactic history, the ancient machine intelligence was retreating. They had faced an enemy that not only fought back, but actually hurt them badly enough to force a withdrawal. All ships, do not pursue, Jack ordered. Let them go. We have achieved our objective. The human fleet watched as the Devourer constructs disappeared into the void between galaxies, their perfect formations broken and their coordination shattered. The threat that had terrorized civilizations for millennia was fleeing from a species that had been in space for less than a century. News of the victory spread across the galaxy within hours. Ambassador Helen Carter found herself addressing a very different galactic council than the one that had listened to humanity's declaration of war months earlier. Honored delegates, she began, looking out at the assembled representatives of dozens of species. I am pleased to report that the Devourer threat has been eliminated. Their fleets have withdrawn beyond the galactic edge and show no signs of returning. The chamber erupted in celebration as species that had lived in fear for millions of years finally felt safe. But Helen was not finished speaking. The Council has asked how humanity achieved what no other species could accomplish, she continued. The answer is simple. We chose to fight instead of hide. Chancellor Vexitar leaned forward in his seat. Ambassador Carter, your species has performed what can only be described as a miracle. The Council would be honored to offer humanity a permanent seat among the senior members.